So I decided that I was going to leave my food plan in place even though I didn't lift. So I swapped things out. But as a result, hey everybody, happy Sunday. It is really rather a wet and windy one out here in Alberta, and we are apparently forecasted to have a hell of a lot of rain over the next couple of days, but you know, it's all good. Makes it a little easier to sleep for those of us who struggle with the heat, especially nowadays with being in prep and all. So we are on the final day of week 6 and starting week 7, and I gotta definitely tell you, it has been a challenging week. You know, the rules and things you gotta do during prep are still relatively easy to follow, easy to do. But, you know, it's the challenge of mixing it with life and making sure everything gets in that sometimes can be a little overwhelming. This week, for example, I had double trouble with absolutely everything, from working double shifts to both of my kids had field trips back to back in the blazing heat before all this rain started. So for me, it's one thing I actually like about my job is the fact that I have a time frame flexibility in which I have to be at work and get my job done. So I have, you know, for example, in the morning when I work morning shift, I have the flexibility of coming in anytime between 3 a.m. and I have to make sure it's done by done by 11. And so when my children, for example, have a field trip, which, as you all know, that would be taking up the entire day, it makes it so that I have the flexibility and ability to be there for my kids. Because as of right now, they still want me on those field trips and they want me to be a part of that, which I treasure beyond anything I can even imagine to describe. And so it makes it so that I can go in, I can get my shift done, and I can still be there for them during the day. And because the school had other things going on, you know, my youngest on Tuesday had a little recorder recital music production thing at the school during their usual assembly time. So, and he wanted me there for that, and those are just moments that I don't ever really want to miss. So between everything, it meant that I had 3 very early starts back to back, 4 a.m. starts Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. And, you know, it meant I had to get my cardio done as well. So, you know, I get up at 4, I go and do my shift, I get my fasted cardio done, and then I go and spend time with my kids. The assembly was great. He did such a good job with his music performance, and then the field trips. Wednesday was definitely easier than Thursday, as most of that field trip was indoors as opposed to outdoors, as we went to the Tyrrell Museum. And then, you know, Thursday was brutal. Thursday was incredibly hot. That one we went to Heritage Park and we spent all day in the heat. By the time we kicked out, it was 28 degrees in Calgary, maybe even a little bit hotter. I don't entirely remember at this point, but I was incredibly drained. And, you know, I hadn't even done my lifts yet, and I actually had made the decision on the Wednesday and Thursday not to do my lift. And as a result, there wasn't any negative consequences. I just made it so that as I only lift 5 days a week, I have 2 days I can be flexible with. So I just moved my lifting days to the weekend so that I have the ability to not over exhaust myself any more than I need to. You know, with that, I also decided to make a nutritional decision. You know, I have a calorie or a macro set of goals that I have to hit on training days, and I have some that I have to hit on rest days. And there is a rhyme and a reason to it. And however, I opted to switch that up as well. Mostly because on my training days I have higher carb, and on my non-training days I have lower carb. But knowing I was going to be outside in the blazing heat with kids and all those kinds of things that go with being in a field trip, I wanted to be as present and as energized and as fueled as I possibly could under the circumstances. So I decided that I was going to leave my food plan in place even though I didn't lift. So I swapped things out. But as a result, you know, there wasn't, I'm eating more than enough at this point, as my coach pointed out, that making subtle changes like that here and there is okay to accommodate life. It's all about making it work for you, which is something she keeps telling me. It's not going to be perfect. Everyone has, their own life. Everyone has their own commitments and the things that they value and deem important. And when you're in prep, it's just a matter of making it all work for you. And that's the only downside to any of this, really, is at the end of the day, even when you're exhausted and you have other commitments to get through, you still have to fit it in. And that's, I think, the hardest part of prep, or any sport you're prepping for or preparing for or working toward. Whatever the goal is, at the end of the day, you still have to get it in. You still have to get all your protein in, you have to get all your carbs in, you have to get all your fats in. You need to make sure you get it all in. You have to get your training done, you have to get your steps in. So no matter what goes on in a day, before you hit bed, you need to make sure you get it all in. And is it going to be perfect? No. There are days where I barely hit 10,000 steps, and then there are days where I'm soaring over it, hitting 2021. Like, it varies on the day. But as long as you're getting the minimums in order to achieve those goals, that's I think the biggest challenge and the biggest thing is, you have to remind yourself why you're doing what you're doing, what it is you're striving for, what are you working for, how important is it to you to make sure you achieve that goal. And I absolutely had a moment or two this week where I just wanted to sleep and I didn't really want to train. But prep is only a small piece of it. It's a small chapter, it's a small window. And it is important that I see it through, and I am becoming more and more determined to see it through as things get a bit more challenging. And that's just how it goes. So I am grateful for the fact that it's raining, and it's cooled things down quite a bit. I was finally able to get some sleep, which has been a challenge of late, between fighting a cold, which impacted my sleep, and then the heat. The hotel room we were in last weekend was incredibly warm. Even with the AC pumped to full capacity, there was very little airflow, and it made it very difficult to sleep. In fact, for that exact reason, we didn't spend, not that we spend a lot of time in the hotel room anyway, but usually at some point during our little getaway, we like to spend some time in the hotel room relaxing and just decompressing a bit. And we didn't really spend too much time doing that. Didn't really get an opportunity to do that, just because of how warm the hotel room was. And so, with that being said, we definitely won't be going back there again, because it's just not worth the sleep deprivation. But all in all, prep is going as smooth as it can be. This week we amped things up a lot. I'm doing 6 days of fasted cardio. We have muddled with my macros a little bit, bringing some things down. But even with all of that, I have finally gotten over a bit of a hump, and the scale is coming back down, which is how we want it to be. I'm shaping up a lot. The scale doesn't tell the entire story, even though I'm fixated on it, which will always be a thing for me. I have lost a lot of body fat. There is a lot of muscle coming through. There's a lot of lines coming through. It's definitely a lot of shape happening. My coach is definitely happy, and she praises me a lot, which I can't be more grateful for. So going into next week, we are leaving everything as it is right now, just because we had a lot of success over this last week. So we're going to ride it out and see how long, or see how much more we can get out of it before we have to make more changes. And yeah, I hope everyone has a wonderful Sunday, and don't get out there, and I say get out there and go for a walk, but unless you enjoy walking around in the rain, all the power to you. Otherwise, I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Cheers.